Zane Richards, the pride of Carbondale. Welcome to the show.
Hey, what's going on?
Great to have you, man. Amazing to watch you kind of put the world on fire this past spring, making your first world team. I see Medlin in your corner. Let's just start there, man. How did you get hooked up with Brian Medlin?
So, story goes, Brian and I met. It was a camp in Champaign back when I was like 12 or 13 years old. It's one of the first or second seasons where I was doing Greco, and Coach Reagan down in Carbondale and my dad were, big proponents in wrestling in the off season, whether it was freestyle and Greco. I liked Greco a lot. I liked the physicalness of it. I thought it worked well, building my hand fighting skills. And so Reagan brought me up to a camp in Champaign, and sure enough, just the big beard and everything was running the camp. Brian's there. And, whenever I asked him, I was like, what was going on in your head that day? He's like, I didn't even want to do that camp. He's like, I was tired. Like I had something going on that weekend, or kids or whatever. And he's like, but I'm really thankful that I did it because I got to find you. And it was just weird because, I would constantly, like every drill or every technique he'd show, I'd be asking a million questions. Like, all right, should my hand be here or here? Should my head be up in this position? And he's just like, what's going on with this kid? Is he messing with me right now? Because I guess at those camps, sometimes you think those kids are screwing around. And, I was dead serious. I'm trying to get better at wrestling, and I'm trying to really learn, how to do Greco. And that's the story of how we met.
And how long, did you start working out with him on the regular during that, or?
Not that I can remember, but I remember he was really informative towards my dad and my coach of like getting me to his camps or getting me to the training opportunities up in Oak Park or in Washington at the time, trying to get me on the dual teams. Like he recognized right away that I was pretty serious, and my family and my system was pretty serious for me to be good. And so, anytime that there was an opportunity, he would vouch for me and he would get me involved. I think it was one of Medlin puts on a Greco camp every year. And it used to be when Powell was down there, they would have like a mini duel setup where they would draft teams and then wrestle each other. And sure enough, Mike didn't know who I was at the time. So Mike passed me up for another wrestler. And Medlin, you could tell, was real quiet during the draft process. And then he just points to me. He's like, get over here. What are you doing? And then I smoked all of Powell's dudes. And then from then on out, Powell claims that he found me first. But it was definitely Brian.
Dude, we just had Mike Powell on last week. Absolutely one of my favorite people, along with Brian Medlin in Illinois wrestling. And man, what was it like in those Oak Park rooms back then, coming up as a Southern State guy?
I always looked at it as an opportunity to, put the South on the map a little bit. I kind of had a chip on my shoulder, these Chicago guys think they're tough. They think they got it. But, I wanted to prove that it don't matter where you're from, and the South can definitely bring the heat. And I just, I remembered in there, it was definitely some scrappy rooms, even though I was ready to compete and fired up, it tested you. And that room got hot. Those guys really knew how to wrestle, and they were tough. So you better bring the heat and you better bring the thunder if you were expected to kind of survive in that room and that setup. But it was super awesome.
Would you was that the Ellis Coleman years? Who would you work out with from during that time?
I was Ellis was junior, senior around the time I started getting in that room, or he may be a little bit younger in high school, when I was in grade school. But I was more with Sammy Brooks, and those guys. So he was the big, one of my best friends growing up, still one of my best friends. I call him all the time or text him whenever I can. At least I say all the time, and
that's how guys are, though. You talk twice a year, but you pick it up just like you left off.
6 months ago. It was like yesterday. But yeah, I was around that era of Oak Park, which was still great, But and Sammy was there, and then from Washington, Dylan Reel was there, Brandon Rice, guys like that. I gravitated towards. They were great guys for sure.
Dude, I was looking at your dual team on the freestyle side from back in that era. Dude, Team Illinois was bringing the heat. It was like Cortez, Bryce Brill, you. It was just boom, boom,
Whitford.
boom, boom. Whitford, I forgot about Whitford. Yeah, that's right. He was at 125. Yeah.
Whitford, Oster would be on there. He's got Sam Brooks, Dylan Reel. Josh Marchuk. I mean, like almost everyone on that lineup, I'd say probably a good 70% maybe would wrestle Division I, and a lot of them have pretty good careers as well. So we were some studs, especially on the freestyle side. And I'd say on the Greco side too, we were. It's just at the time, whenever we would like pop off and win nationals, it would be names that maybe people were unfamiliar with at the time. And then we would start winning these dual teams, and we start performing well at Fargo. And then people go, oh my God, Illinois is this just, gritty, tough state that just wins wrestling matches, and you're not supposed to. We weren't supposed to beat PA at the time, or we weren't supposed to beat Oklahoma or Iowa or Wisconsin, especially in Greco, but we just found a way to out-scrap them. And,
right.
Yeah.
The cool thing is that it's completely separate people running the show too. Like the Greco guys, like totally separate than the freestyle guys at that time. It was, at least from my understanding, the coaches weren't even the same team. So like, what was it like in those Medlin PAL rooms, like getting ready for like Fargo or for the duels? Would each guy run a practice, or like how would it work?
I mean, it may have been one guy's idea at first, but it definitely, by the time practice hit, it melded or molded both personalities into one. And it really came out in such a dramatic and awesome way for a wrestler. Like if you were a kid growing up, or even like a college guy, like I just don't understand if you didn't want those guys to be your mentors and your coaches. I just feel like you don't like wrestling, and you don't like being super manly and macho. It was just everything. Every drill had a purpose. Every technique was not wasted. They never showed junk, but they also wanted you to tear it up. They also wanted you to do highlight moves, and they showed you how to do it right. And then every drill just brought out like your manhood, basically. They tested you, as this young kid to basically grow up and be a man and handle your business, where, you felt the grittiness of yourself and your soul get hardened over time. And, at the time I couldn't conceptualize exactly that feeling, but looking back, I mean, those were super informative and important years in my development, because it just showed you that, you can kind of do it all in wrestling. You don't have to be a technical guy, or you don't have to be an athlete. You can be a gritty athlete who's got the best technique in the country. And they just brought it out. Phenomenal coaches. And they made it fun too. They made it a lot of fun where, yes, wrestling's a hard sport, but you got to make it more enjoyable. And they made it that every day.
And so would you guys do your Fargo camp separate than like the freestyle only guys?
Kind of alongside of it. So back when I was wrestling, Greco was first. So you showed up for Greco and you're doing your sessions. And then the last 2-3 days, if you were a doubler, they wanted you to get one in one style, one in the other style, one in one style, and I was always like, can I do all 3 practices? And they're like, no, you psycho. Like, we want you to perform well at Fargo. I'm like, that's stupid. I should be able to wrestle all 3 and then still, wrestle later. But, yeah, and usually one of them, typically Medlin would show up for the freestyle practice and kind of govern you a little bit, just because he understood from the beginning of camp where your body was at and where your mind was at. So he could kind of keep you dialed in or pull off on the brakes a little bit if need be.
Mm-hmm. Man, it's just like to think back on the amount of national titles won for Team Illinois back in that era, whether it was the duels or Fargo itself. I mean, you know how many you were a part of national team champs?
A lot.
Probably like, at least like more than like 3 or 4, I'm thinking.
Yeah. I mean, it felt like, I did cadets both years, juniors both years. And then I think my oldest year in cadets, I did both. And I only remember, yeah. And so, yeah, and I think I only took like 2 matches off that year that I did both. So I got like, just in duels, I got like 20 something matches in, which was the coolest thing ever.
Wow.
But
high level matches too. You know what I mean? Like all out there scrapping with like the best guys from each state. And that's 20 in June. And then Fargo, you probably put in another like 12 to 16 matches.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And it was probably more a lot of 20, because the pool play, I mean, you wrestled it all the way down, and I was at the weights that weren't like, no offense to like the 106 pounders or 94 pounders or whatever, but you hit like 126, 132. Like those are typically the bracket sheets that, when you held up on the podium, it would roll out onto the floor type of thing. And it was a lot of matches, but for one, I loved it. I love wrestling, and the fact that, I got an opportunity to wrestle that many matches in my life is just the coolest thing in my mind. Really thankful for that. And then, the other thing that my dad always professed to me growing up, and my home coach too with Reagan, they would say, this is your opportunity to wrestle the best guys in the country. Go there, compete, go scrap with them, whoop their butt, and then come back. We'll make corrections. And then when it comes to Fargo, you're not just winning matches, but we'll be teching guys. And that happened a lot where I would scrap it out with some, someone good from Oklahoma or Wisconsin or whatever, and it'd be close, or, maybe I took a loss, right? And then come Fargo, I'd smoke them. And I would, meticulously think about, like, okay, where did I get beat? Why was it so close? What should I add to my game or bring out in myself if I want to actually dominate this tournament, and guarantee a title as much as you can actually guarantee something. I mean, you only can really control like 10% of what's going on out there, but.
Right. Well, it's cool to think back on it, and, especially because it's Fargo week here, it's coming soon. And I know you were a coach for Team Illinois at the duels in some capacity. Is the training camp going on right now at the University of Illinois, just like it used to?
Yes. So we're in the Armory right now. So instead of the ice arena, it's right next door in the Armory. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit hotter. The sun's on you a little bit more, which I like. We actually just got done with one of the practices. So, I'm like running over. I'm sweating. I'm wrestling with the kids and stuff, showering up, getting ready for this podcast. But, I love it. I love the coaching part of it. I just love wrestling in general. And especially anytime I can give back, what was given to me, I try to give my best effort. Anytime a kid's like, oh, can we scrap this go? It's like, yeah, maybe I don't want to in that moment because I haven't warmed up, or maybe it's the off season and, I'm a little bit banged up, but, I see a look in this kid's eye of like, this is my chance to wrestle this high level guy. I can't say no to that, because I would have asked the same thing. And so, it's just a super awesome opportunity. And I got to say, the guys are responding really well to the training we're putting them through. So I'm super excited for this Fargo.
I was going to say, how are the Illinois Hammers looking, man? I know we didn't win the duels, but we were right there, and you got some guys, studs on the team going into Fargo.
For sure. I mean, I think the studs look pretty good right now. And, I think one thing that we overlook to, especially, all these websites talk about like why certain teams win. Oh, they got this stud and that stuff. You got guys that maybe are those borderline kids, the blood round kids, or kids the round before the blood round, and they show up to camp and you give them something to be inspired about, or you show them one technique of like, hey, when you get a push out, look for this thing. I can't release all the information out right now. I can't give the other states the edge, but you show them that thing, and then you're there and you're watching these kids that you've only known for a couple of weeks, but they execute the technique and it gets them on the podium. And I think that's one of the things we've been known for when I've coached at Fargo, in my short career there as a coach, is, in those later days, in those sessions where people are kind of losing their minds almost, we're finding ways to win matches and scoring points when, it matters the most. I mean, especially in Greco, because so much of that is about just a fist fight and who's going to figure out a way. I mean, I remember one year, it's like we won in the blood round like 4 or 5 matches in the last 12 seconds, where we're losing or we're winning, and we've got to pull something kind of out of our butt to find a way to win. But then you watch that as a coach and you just like, how are you not the most excited you've ever been in your life? You're dog tired, but these guys just gave their best effort possible and doing heroic things, for 14 to 18-year-old kids. It's just remarkable to see what they can do.
You hear that, Team Minnesota? Look out. We're ready, baby. We're ready.
Always.
Dude, those Pinnacle guys have been looking good lately. It's so exciting to see those guys putting, such a focus in. All the states now are so tough. It's like everyone's got their A games. The Seabolt squad has got some killers. They're lining some dudes up. So it's awesome to see. I love this week.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's good. It's good. First of all, we needed a challenge. It was getting boring.
Yes.
Playing around, of course, but in good fun. But in all serious, I always respect whenever a club is doing it the right way and they're producing good kids. And, I want to see more top level kids coming out of all over the country, doing it the right way. And, having more progression where kids are staying in and they're staying at a high level. And I think that's how you grow wrestling, because it's something we always need to be thinking about as much as we've tried to focus on winning and producing and things like that. Well, part of producing is also drawing more people to the sport and showing them that it can be accomplished at a high level, and wrestling at a high level is very enjoyable, I think is like the next step. Having lots of clubs that can do that probably increases our chances of having our sport go, the next 100 years or wherever long.
Man, I think of immediately the Askren guys. They seem to do a great job of like teaching a love for the sport. And then, shout out to the great Izzy style. Those guys have a lot of fun in there. Is the, let me ask you this, is the man of the hour, one of the studs of Illinois, Cannon Webster? Is he on campus right now getting ready? Is he wrestling this year?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess am I allowed to say that? I mean, you're phrasing
I don't
it
know.
like,
No, I just didn't know if he was, I didn't even know if he was doing Fargo or not this year. I'm not like in the trenches like some of these guys are, but I just know he's a hammer and won it last year. I didn't know if he was out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I look at Cannon as like that's someone I really want to see career do well. I've spent a lot of time with him, working with him, and he's looked great. He's at camp right now and just looks well, and he shows up every day really trying to get the most out of himself. And it's some days it's like it holds me accountable when I'm practicing. I look over at Cannon and I'm like, shoot, this dude's outworking me. I better step it up a little bit. Like, holy crap, man. Like, I don't want to get my butt whooped by this, this lanky kid with hands the size of, bananas. Like, good Lord. But he's looked great. He's developing his offense and working on, just his overall quality as a wrestler. And love being around that kid. Super awesome person. So
yeah, man, I'm excited to watch all the guys. And when you think about some of your development, everyone knows that, Medlin has just ties within ties in Russia, and you guys go over there all the time. And I see on your Instagram, you're going at Christmas time. You're going at all times. Tell me about your first trip over there. What memories do you have of that experience?
Yeah. So, the first one, I was coming off of shoulder surgery. So I had only been on the mat for like a month and a half or 2 months. So one of my memories is the fact that I wasn't in the greatest of shape, which, sucked a little bit, but it was also good. Like, if you're going to come back and try to get into shape, why not do it in a way that like forces you to try to execute technique properly? And, memory wise, there's all sorts of things like, we got stuck in an elevator on our way back, and that's not something you want to have happen in a country where you could barely speak the language. I didn't speak it at all. And Medlin, his Russian was, getting better, wasn't super great. Now it's like pretty dang good. But, we're stuck in an elevator on the way back, and we get there and, at first they walk different, their mannerisms are different. And I overthink things sometimes. So I'm thinking like I'm sticking out like a sore thumb, like I don't belong. But, once the practices started and once you got into the training, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what language you spoke. It didn't matter what country you're from. They understood you were there to get better. And if you were respectful and trying to learn and giving your best effort every day in practice, they recognize that. And they really, they've taken to that. And I've made some good friends over there, even though we barely understand each other when we talk. We definitely respect each other and highly recommend if anyone gets a chance to safely get over there. I would recommend it.
And you guys are going to Ossetia?
Yes. So we go to Vladikavkaz and Ossetia, and we've got kind of like a host family that helps us out over there. And we're watching some of the top guys in the world train right next to me, and some of their young studs, I'm working with, or I'm watching them compete next to me too. And so that room is super competitive, especially if you're a middleweight to an upper weight. Like I don't know what other room you could, ask for other than like the national team camp rooms in America, right?
You got Sidakov, you got Bayev, right? I mean,
you got all the Valievs, you got Sidakov, Bayev, and there's a bunch of other guys in there, lightweight and heavy, where they're pulling home hardware. And at the time, we wanted to go there because it was the most decorated Olympic, medal gym in the world. So we're thinking, well, if you're going to go wrestle at some place, you might want to go to the one that's has a system for getting it done. And one thing that was vivid was just they trained different, and not so drastic that it wasn't wrestling, but it was different enough to where it definitely changed how I thought about the game of, not everything has to be this way to get it done, especially because we have a folk style system where there's a lot of teams with a lot of success doing it the way they've done it. But freestyle is a bit of a different game, and learning how to actually execute your training, not just the matches, is really important.
Yeah. It's, man, I can't even imagine how cool it must be to be in that environment and to see the subtleties of how things are different. One of the things I love is just kind of going through how they look at a typical day in the life. What does that look like just based on your experience going over there?
So my experience, day in the life of a wrestler, you get up and maybe you get a little drink of water or maybe a little bit of tea, but most of the guys get up, they put on their jackets and stuff. Maybe they're religious over there, so some of them will say a prayer, and then they go outside and they just kind of go on like a team walk for anywhere from 10 minutes to a half hour. And most of the time I've gone, it's been in the winter time, so it's cold. And it doesn't matter if it's ice, snow, some of them will just stand outside, but they get outside for that first 30 minutes of the day just to kind of wake up. You come back in, the training gym, and breakfast is already made for you in like the dining hall area. All of it's connected in one building. So you got your dining hall on the first floor. Above it, you have your dorms. And then right next to the dining hall is like now it's an 8-mat gym. So it's all connected. Here at a building, it's like you got everything you need. Like, let's get this job done.
And what time are you guys getting up?
Getting up around 7-ish. Like, people are walking around 7:30. Breakfast is around 8:30. Sometime in there. I get up a little bit earlier just because flying over, and then my cycle is usually a little bit out of whack. But I like getting up a little bit earlier in general. So I'm probably up like 30 minutes to an hour before they get up. And that's maybe when I check on the news that what happened last night in America, and all that kind of stuff. But, they're up, they're eating breakfast by about 8:30. And then you got a little bit of time to get your day going. A lot of them just hang out or talk to each other. Some of them go back up to the room, shower, and 11 a.m. practice rolls around. So everyone goes down to the practice. You line up. On the wall, the coaches have some sort of speech about maybe what they're going to do technically that day, what they need to work on. Sometimes you have like a guest wrestler who's not from around the area. Like when Bajrang was there, they have him walk out, raise his hand, everyone claps for him. And, there's a lot of like respect being given out in these gyms before practice even starts, and I see that on our national team practices a lot. Coach Zadok will say things like, all right, we have this guest in here today. We have this guest. And maybe they're not even super involved with that practice, but it's just they're showing respect that time has been spent and effort is being given to the sport. And they do that a lot over there. Coaches usually get their hands shaken by all the wrestlers as you start warming up. And you get warming up, you get into practice, and
don't skip the warm up on us now. Don't skip the warm ups.
Oh yeah.
What's going on? What's going on there? Anything different, or is it status quo?
No, I mean it's different. Some of the exercises, the first time I saw them, I thought they were kind of silly, like kid exercises. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, let's get some sprints in. Let's get some hard tumbling. Let's do this. Rah, rah, rah. And they're doing things where like they're waving their arms weird. But then over time, like I've adopted into my warm up, and it builds a lot of athleticism that you don't realize. Like a little kid telling him to like move his arms in like a goofy motion is building hand-eye coordination, right? We see it as an adult as like, well, that's silly. Why would you do that? It's like, well, because it's hard to do as you run, as you spin in a circle. We're building our body mechanics. So there's a lot of stuff like that. You got your standard shuffling, not really a lot of stance and motion, light tumbling, so forward rolls, backwards rolls, but then crab walk, forward, backward, cartwheels, bear crawls, things like that. And then you get into like this dynamic stretching where, now we're bouncing, we're doing high kicks while we're bouncing, we're doing jumping jacks, we're doing burpees, we're lunging side to side, we're doing bridge spins. And the warm-up can take anywhere from, I'd say the shortest warm-ups we've had over there are 15 minutes, the shortest. And then most of them last anywhere from 20 to 28 minutes. Like, they're long warm-ups where, you look around the room, guys are sweating and they are ready to go, and so, and that's what I think a warm-up should be. A lot of times we get kids coming in and they do a couple sprints, their heart rate went up a little bit. And they're like, all right, I'll warm up as I drill. And no, like, when drilling starts, you are warmed up and you should be ready to execute your technique as fast as you can go, and that's what happens. You start drilling and, it's very light resistance. So I'm not going to sit there and like keep my elbows in like tight on you. Maybe I'll start that way, but then as your hands get to the spot, I'll just move my arms for you. And when you go, I mean, it's like an explosion, and you think you're going fast and their coaches will walk around right by you and they're looking at you like, why are you going so slow? Like, you look like you're moving in quicksand. I mean, they do. They look at you like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't time to warm into it. You boom, fast,
like a nice slow high C. Like
nope, none of that. When it's time to drill, I mean, it's bang. Everything should be tight. The technique should be clean, and you should be fast. Not a lot of resistance from your partner, and that's how they drill. And we wonder, man, they're so fast, or their timing and feel is so good. It's like, yeah, because their whole system is based on just that feeling motion of every rep they've ever hit was fast. So when they explode, I mean, it's years of body muscle and tissue built to be explosive. Yeah, one of the coaches always would tell me, he goes, short time short. And it just, I'd look at him after I hit a rep and he'd shake his head and he'd just do this. And I knew, I was like, I'm not going fast enough, so, but yeah, I mean, super explosive. And then by the time, maybe 5-6 minutes of that, usually you do like 3 minutes upper body, and then you start only doing leg attacks. Then you get into like sparring, and sparring, is definitely an experimental time. You try things, you're trying to be competitive, but winning isn't the ultimate goal. Getting better at wrestling is when you're sparring. So, there's a fine line in there. I will say, if you go overseas and you're American and they say push, which means sparring, they're not about to spar with you. You're going live. Right?
Really?
Like, oh yeah, no, I don't know how many times, like, I look around, they're kind of play wrestling, sparring, and then the guy will like shake my hand like he's about to go easy, and I just get blown off my feet, slammed on my head. And I'm like, all right, I guess I should have seen that coming, So by the time, anyone says push to me anymore, or let's spar, I'm like, okay, this guy wants to go live right out the gate. So you got to be ready to go. So word of warning, don't get caught off guard if they're wrestling you or you're the hardest wrestling group in the room. Like, that's just something that they do, which is,
I
all about it.
I thought it'd be the opposite, because I've heard that when Americans go over there and drill, sometimes they drill too hard. Like, they'll come in with a club and they'll get pissed that you're like hand fighting too hard during the drill.
Right, during the drill.
But during the spar, it's different.
Right, sparring is different. The drill is super, again, we're like, oh, you got to move them 5-6 times, and then you'll work on your setup into your shot. No, drilling is one touch, go. Maybe one setup, go. Maybe move, go. And there's just not a lot of resistance. It's not, I think they look at it as like, why would we beat our bodies up in this moment when it's really just getting our fine tuning and our sharpening of our skills, right? Mm-hmm. And you can do all those things without bang clubbing your partner, right? Yeah, I can be heavy with my hands and really move them, but I don't need to cause a ton of damage to them. Then when we get into sparring and live, that's whenever we can really start ramping up the total intensity of it.
And do they do a lot of situations?
Yes. Almost every spar is some sort of variation of wrestling. And I will say, especially during their training camps for the Oregon or for the national tournament, they always spar one situation Greco, right? And so I think that's something that we should take away as a country for you, Greco naysayers out there. Understand that, Russia is practicing Greco. Even in their freestyle practices, they spend at least 3-minute spar, probably more like 2-3 minute goes in a Greco position. And it's important, scoring not just from leg attacks is part of the game. And we've got some guys in who had won world tournaments from Russia or other countries where they don't even have a leg attack, but they're world champions, and that should show you that what the value of wrestling upper body gives you.
Yeah, I mean, when I did the audio documentary on Brandon Slay wrestling Satiev, we did a episode where we did a flashback on Satiev. Dude won his first world title and nothing but a slide by, just all from that upper body feel. I mean, he lived off that.
Oh, for sure. And I actually got this happened at one of our Fargo camps. Steve Marionetti, he helps coach, and he claimed there's no video out there of Adam Satiev ever hitting a penetration step. And so I'm like, I watch a lot of video. I bet I can find one. And I started searching for like a good half hour, and I'm like, I don't know if this dude ever hit a penetration step. And then finally there's one video where, just classic head tap pull, single leg, but he didn't even finish the single leg. So like Steve's like, well, it doesn't count if he doesn't score it, does it? So we're having that debate every year just about. I still think I won the bet, but
when he took out Yoel, I don't know if it was an inside trip or whatever it was, but it was like right off the bat, put some big points up, but he retired early. I mean, he could have maybe had, as many titles as his brother.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why. I would assume, he was probably up a weight, which makes it harder. And maybe he took more damage because of that. I know when I've read things about the man, he seemed to be more invested in, not saying, his brother wasn't, but he seemed to be really invested in the community, at home as a large, and a little bit more devout religiously, which I can't fault either of them for picking the path that they chose. I mean, they're both idols of mine. So those are all reasons, and, everyone gets to make choices in their life. And despite what we may think as wrestlers, being on a podcast and all that, there are things other than wrestling in life that are very important, probably more important, although I hesitate to say probably, but they're certainly more important than wrestling.
Well, like you said, like Bovasar lives in Moscow and is a politician, and Adam lives in, I don't know if it's Chechnya or Dagestan, but one of the two, and lives with his mom still. He's very religious, and works at the local gym. But yeah, just imagine like him versus Kale in the 2004 finals would have been electric. That was that would have been a match to see. So when you guys go over there, just to tie the knot on Russia, I see a lot that they spend time in the sauna. And I got to ask, what's the hat you wear in the sauna?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, Tom and Terry are always wearing it. Ask those crazy guys, but,
is it a Russian thing or just a wrestler thing?
No, I think it's like a sauna thing. Like, I think they do it overseas in a lot of different sauna houses. I don't know if it was invented in Russia or whatever. Supposedly it's supposed to keep the heat distributed more evenly in your body and kind of away from your head. So, if you're sitting in the sauna and your head gets overly hot, you're going to feel like you want to get out of the sauna a lot more soon than if your head wasn't just burning up. If your body was hot, but your head felt relatively cool, you'll stay in there maybe a little bit longer. I think that's the idea. Again, it could just be like one guy came into the sauna one day drunk and was like, hey guys, check out what I'm wearing. And as a practical joke, everyone went along with it. Now we just have these generations of people wearing a practical joke. I don't know.
Fair enough. I didn't know if there was some secret voodoo in there from the Caucasus Mountains.
No, I think it just helps you stay in a little bit longer. But I will say those saunas are no joke, for sure.
Hotter than ours?
Oh, easily. I mean, we can get ours that hot. I'm not saying we can't, but a lot of times when we go into a sauna, we have an idea of, I should be able to sit 15, maybe 20, plus goes, for a long period of time and really sweat. And in those suckers, man, if you stay in for 15 consistently, you're one of the toughest dudes I've ever met. Because that 15 minutes is a battle. Like, that is a battle to stay in for that long. I mean, I've gone into some of them where the boards are so hot, I left with like 2nd-degree burns basically on my body. Like I laid down and they hit me with the leaves. And when I got out, I mean, I had blisters like on my shoulders because of where they was touching the boards. in the sauna.
Man.
I mean, it's hot. And, you know, Medlin always, he's like, you go sit up on the top row, I'll sit on the bottom. I'm like, thanks, man. And then, you know, they're hitting me with the leaves, they're pouring water, I'm dying. And, you know, I'm like breathing heavy just to calm myself down. And Medlin's like, don't make noise, you know, control yourself right now. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm literally blistering on my body and you're trying to tell me not to breathe loud, because, you know, that's too much. But at the same time, if that's what he thinks is good for me, I better listen, right?
So do they sauna after like that 11 a.m. workout?
No, they only sauna like maybe twice a week, usually twice a week. And then on Wednesdays is like your off day. Not an off day, but like in the morning, you'll either play a game like, you know, call it Russian basketball, which is basically just rugby and basketball combined. And then some guys will do cross, you know, fit type stuff or go for a run. And then you'll go in the sauna. And then the rest of the day is off. And then you train hard again Thursday, Friday. Usually Friday is the most match situational live wrestling. You know, they get away from situations, but they'll do maybe 2 matches in the morning, 1 or 2 at night. And typically it's like a warm up, small drill. We're going matches, you know, at the end of every week. It's almost like you know, the week you're teaching yourself the tools in school, you're taking quizzes, you know, you're learning exercises. And then Friday is the test. You know, did you get better this week? Or are you working on the things that you probably should have been? Are you executing better or whatever? And then Saturday is kind of the same thing as Wednesday, maybe a little bit longer of a, you know, lift or rope type workout, because you're done for that day and Sunday is completely off. You know, they get mad if you try to work out on Sunday. You know, they're super big believers in the fact that, hey, you're doing nothing. Like we relax here. So, and I think that's super important. Like that's something you know, one thing in the United States, we probably should do a little bit better about. And I think the better clubs and the better programs understand that, but recovery is a big part of the sport. You know, if you just keep running yourself down, you're never going to quite execute at your full potential when you drill or when you do live wrestling. So when it's time to rest, you need to recover as much as you possibly can. So when you execute your technique, you can actually break through the barrier of being faster. You know, you can be stronger. If you don't take those rests, well, you never really recover. And then you're just practicing at half capacity, which creates bad habits.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like we have a bit of overtraining and definitely have in the past, hopefully less so now. And it's so like when you get to the match day on Friday, is it 1 session or 2 sessions?
2 sessions. So pretty much every day is 2 sessions. Earlier in the week, you might just have a session where, you know, in the morning you're sorry, my boy Ed Ruth just came in here.
Ed Ruth, what's up? Past podcast guest.
How's it going?
But anywho, so, you know, earlier in the week, you got like smaller workouts, or maybe one larger workout. Then the afternoon, you play basketball or a cross training workout. Typically, you know, you see your better wrestlers tend to not play basketball as much, but they do. You know, it's not like they don't, you know, like having fun.
Sidakov
But
gets out
later
there?
Who does?
Sidakov?
He's like the one I'd never see. Like which, man, I don't know, you know, he might be the best one. So like, maybe there's something to that. But, you know, you got guys like Nirfanov and Valiev and them, you know, they're jumping off the wall and dunking and doing crazy stuff. So, you know, they have fun, but definitely on like match days or later in the week, they're not doing much of that. You know, it's pretty serious. And on those match days, you can tell, especially on like the Friday day where it's 2 sessions, maybe 2 matches in the morning or 3 matches in the morning, 2 at night, where there's a ton of wrestling, everyone's a little bit more quiet. You know, everyone's just a little bit more zoned in and locked in, ready to compete. And, you know, I get it. You know, if you go into school, you're a little bit more focused, ready to take that big exam at the end of the year. Well, you know, if you look at your live day, your match day as kind of an exam, you need to be a little bit more focused and ready to go, you know? And so again, it's another thing that I admire about their system. And I think, you know, we don't have to do it exactly like that, but it's something to take note about.
Even if there's anything like 1 or 2 things, you know, we can grab and bring back, it's worthwhile.
For sure. And I also understand too, we're very competitive with them. It's not like we're light years behind them or anything, and we just got to reinvent the wheel. And there's certain things government wise that they're allowed to do that we're not allowed to do. Their kids wrestling is all state funded.
Mm-hmm.
So their coaches are already paid for. You don't have to sign kids up and pay an entry fee to tournaments, or you don't have to pay for coaching or anything like that. It's given to you by the state. And so you would think that wrestling would be more popular if parents didn't even have to spend money on an after school program. But that's just not going to happen here in the United States.
Right. Like to get like an overtime quality of coaching back in our day, team overtime for free. Imagine if you could do that throughout the country. I mean, obviously things would be that much better.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what's happening. They're getting a Sean Bourmet down at just the local gym every day. Hey, 11 a.m., like, he's going to be there. Or Jeremy Hunter's Jeremy Hunter's running practice at 3 p.m. tonight, guys, for the week. So, do with that what you want. Brian Medlin's going to have a session at noon,
Right.
at this location. And they spread it out to where, they try to find all the talent that they can in their country. So it's a very, it's different from my perspective for sure, but it is something that I think we should take note of and at least kind of understand the beast a little bit, especially if we want to overtake them on a consistent basis.
Absolutely. Last thing I wanted to ask you about, Imar's back home. Big news for the Illini Nation. Coach Poet is excited. Everyone's excited. Just give us your thoughts on Imar returning.
Well, I was supposed to be the best man at his wedding, and then then COVID happened. So, the fact that one of my best friends is coming back home, I just love having him around because he's such a great guy, and he was a big influence on me. But coming into the staff, I don't know if you could ask for a better fit because you know what you're getting, right? His philosophy. I think he has learned in his short career away from Illinois, he has learned a lot more about actually coaching. And I think he's very hungry and he's ready to go. And if I know Isaiah, there's one thing he is, it's competitive. And so, if he's transitioning into a pure coaching role, you better watch out on the recruiting trail and you better watch out in that wrestling room because this sucker doesn't like losing.
Come on now. Let's go.
Yeah. And so if you're an Illini fan, I would be very excited. Obviously, things take time. We can't get ahead of ourselves, but, we're looking at one of the most decorated staffs in the country right now. And, I put the challenge on our current Illini wrestlers to say, hey, man, we are giving you about as good of tools as you can ask for. And if it's not, then, you got to look inside yourself at that point.
And let's get those high scores listening. Let's build it up in state, boys. Let's keep it in state if we can. Because, man, seeing the University of Illinois back on top of the Big Ten, like during the Mark Johnson era, what would be better than that? Unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. I like orange and blue. I've always liked that color combination. And then the fact that, that's a home for me. I think it belongs at the top of the podium every single year, but.
So when you were going through college, when you were a junior and you got fourth, how old was Imar?
I think he was a year younger than me. So he was a sophomore that year.
So he was winning his second consecutive at that point.
Yes, I believe so.
Man,
it all kind of runs together. But
to watch someone like that come in so explosive and just so confident, it must have been incredible to be a part of.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it was jaw-dropping to say the least. I mean, he was doing stuff in the wrestling room where, like, you go lighter guys first, a little heavier guys second. Me and Jeremy would be looking at Isaiah hitting something nonsensical, with the power and skill he has, and we just like eye each other and shake our heads like, well, it'd be nice to have that, but at the same time, the thing that made Isaiah great, I think above all else, was his mind. He was so, when he was locked in, he was in such absolute belief of himself, and he would say the craziest things that he would read out of some article on the internet, but he would quote it to himself like a religion. And then I forget. There was one where I forget the exact saying. Brian knows it. but specifically he was wrestling Nolf before the final, for the world team trials, before he wrestled Burroughs in the final X, the year he beat Burroughs in the match. And Isaiah, I think, won the first match, and then second match, he's winning late, and then something silly happens on the edge of the mat. He gives up 4 and he loses the match, right? So now you got all this momentum in Nolf's favor. You're going a third match when you think you weren't going to wrestle a third match. And this guy, Jason Nolf, is a good wrestler, and he's hungry, and he wants to beat you, And so a lot of guys at that point kind of shift their mentality down, and Isaiah just had a mantra. And I forget not having it in the moment because it could change so many lives right now, But he just, Brian and I, all he did, he just sat there almost like catatonic, and like you'd tell him technique, and he would just be like kind of nodding off, and then you'd see he'd be mumbling something, and then sure enough, as he's walking out there, he's just repeating it like verbally out loud, boom, 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 and then he goes out and he wrestles phenomenal, does the complete opposite of what most of these stories tell you. And it's moments like that where I really understood Isaiah to be one of the strongest mentally focused guys, that I've ever met in my life when it came time to it, so. And
that's so rare. I mean, during the moments of battle like that, where two dudes going at it, like a Nolf and an Imar, or a JB and an Imar, it's the rarest of things to have two people going at it who actually believe they can win in that scenario.
Right. And it makes for amazing wrestling. I think that's one reason why people love watching Isaiah, was because he would wrestle to his fullest potential on a consistent basis. And if two guys at that level are wrestling to their fullest potential, like, it's incredible, just feeling the energy. You could not know anything about wrestling, but you can feel the human spirit that's involved in those matches. And that's gotta, that is something why I think we still watch wrestling as a society. Because by all means, society is so comfortable at this point that we shouldn't be watching two dudes beat each other up. But like, there's something in us that says, like, when two guys go to fist fight each other and they're trying as hard as they can, like, it just brings out that inner human and what makes us human in one moment. It's just, without sounding too corny, it's just a beautiful moment for life, reality.
It is, man, especially when you put a dude like that with the explosion that Imar has. I've heard people say that, like, his explosive power is like nothing they've ever felt before.
He's the strongest human being I've ever felt. maybe Ed Ruth, but I haven't felt Ed for that long, so.
Awesome, man. It's so good to get so pumped for Coach Poeta putting together that staff. And I think the tweet or something like that was most NCAA finals appearances are tied for the most of any coaching staff in the country. So, and bringing in a Penn State legend, one of the greats of that era, maybe all time.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just think it's awesome, though. I mean, really, really good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a great, it's a phenomenal coaching staff, and people, I still think, underestimate the value of, someone having like Brian Medlin and Jeremy Hunter around, two wrestling minds that are just, it's weird. They're like encyclopedias, and not just encyclopedias, but applied encyclopedias. It'd be like if WebMD was actually accurate on a consistent basis, like, I'll come to them with a question and they just say, well, why don't you just do, this one simple thing? And I'm like, well, because I'm not you. Okay. Like, I'm not this Rolodex of perfect information, apparently, so, but that's what makes everyone, special, is they have not just the skill sets and the accolades, but the ability to profess their knowledge and actually pass it down to a new generation of Illini. So if you are looking at this school, I mean, it's something where I'm not really sure what else you could look for in a program. If you're serious about trying to be the best at wrestling, you should come to U of I.
Guaranteed trips to Russia if you act correctly.
Oh, absolutely. You step up and you show us what you're made of and that you mean business. Old Sidikov's going to have new practice partners.
Oh my God, bro. That's awesome. It's been so good to catch up, Zane Richards. And, we didn't get to talk about the high school days, the IKWF days, but your high school coach was the father of the great Allie Reagan, past guest, longtime listener. And, we just want to give props to those guys. And it's been great to have you on, man. Talk a little Illinois wrestling and talk a little Fargo.
Yeah, no problem. And all I can say is I'm just grateful for all the opportunities that have been given. I wouldn't be here without, Coach Reagan, my dad, my family, my dogs, even keeping me sane whenever I'm by myself at my house. So whatever it is, whichever loved one in my life, is there with me. It's, it means a lot, and I really appreciate it. And, Ryan, I just really appreciate the fact that you let me, on such a prestigious podcast, in my opinion. So thank you.
That's crazy to hear, but thank you so much, brother. It is an honor, and you're always welcome back. Have a great day, and tell everyone down there we say what's up.
All right. No problem.
Peace,
ILL.
man. Thank you.